The farmhouse had been quiet for hours, nothing but the creak of settling beams and the distant hum of crickets outside the thin, rattling windows. Sheriff Daniel Harlow sat in the kitchen with a half-empty bottle of bourbon, the only light a dull lamp throwing shadows across the table. His partner, K9 Storm, lay by his boots, alert even in rest, ears twitching at every faint sound. It should have been just another restless night. But then Storm lifted his head, eyes fixed on the ceiling, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Something was up there, and it was moving. If you enjoy immersive thrillers like this, consider liking and subscribing. It helps me keep bringing you more stories like these, told with care and atmosphere. The sound came faint at first, a weight dragging slow across dry wood. Daniel froze, his hand hovering above the bottle. He had grown up in this house, knew every groan of its bones, every sigh of its boards. This sound didn't belong. Storm's growl deepened, ears flat, body tense like a coiled spring. Daniel's voice, rough with whiskey and years of chasing shadows, cut low in the dim. Easy, boy. Easy. The dog didn't blink. His gaze locked on the ceiling above the kitchen, where the light bulb swayed ever so slightly. The sheriff stood, chair legs scraping across the linoleum. He hadn't drawn his gun yet. Old houses had raccoons, squirrels, even owls trapped in the attic. That's what he told himself as his hand slid toward the revolver at his hip. The noise came again. Not a scuttle, not a flutter. A drag. Something heavy, something deliberate. Storm took 3 stiff steps forward, hackles bristling, a low bark breaking the stillness. Daniel's heart began to thump with a rhythm that had nothing to do with bourbon. He forced himself to move, up the narrow hallway, past the crooked family photos, toward the pull-down ladder that led into the attic. The cord swayed just slightly as though stirred by a hand. He swallowed. "Stay," he told Storm. The order was firm, but his voice carried a crack he couldn't hide. He pulled the cord. The wooden ladder groaned down, dust falling like dry snow. The smell hit first, sour, metallic, something not of dust and insulation, something closer to rot. Daniel clicked his flashlight on, beam cutting into the dark throat of the attic. Silence. He lifted one boot onto the first rung, then another, though it felt soft under his weight, too soft, like it had been gnawed or worn thin. Storm barked suddenly, sharp and explosive, the sound rattling Daniel's nerves. "Quiet." Daniel snapped, but his own throat was tight. Halfway up, the sound came again, not above, but behind. A faint drip. He froze. Turned. The kitchen light swung harder now, shadows jerking across the walls. Something dark had landed on the linoleum, splattered across the floor in fat, wet drops. Blood. Daniel's breath hitched. Storm whined, pawing toward the red trail, nose twitching violently. And then, before Daniel could climb down, before he could move at all, something fell. Not from the ladder, from the ceiling itself. The plaster split open like a wound, showering dust, and out tumbled a small, lifeless hand. Pale, stiff, childlike. Daniel stumbled backward, boots slipping on the linoleum. His flashlight clattered across the floor, beams spinning wild across cracked wallpaper and broken glass. Storm howled. Not barked, but howled, the sound raw and ragged. The hand lay still. Just a hand. Nothing else. Daniel gagged. For a moment, the seasoned sheriff would face down armed men, bloody crash sites, and the worst of rural violence was just a boy again, terrified, helpless, staring at something he couldn't explain. He forced himself closer, closer, until the dust settled enough for him to see. It wasn't fresh. The skin was waxy, shriveled, the flesh long drained of life. Daniel bent, sweat streaking his face, while burning his throat. He touched it with the barrel of his revolver. The fingers curled ever so slightly, as though some remnant of motion still clung to them. "No, no, no!" His voice cracked. "Not here." Storm barked again, frantic, pacing circles around the mess. And then came another sound, not from the ceiling, from the attic still yawning above. A voice, faint, female, broken. "Danny?" The flashlight's beam stopped on the torn plaster, on the gap where the hand had fallen through, and in the black, Two eyes stared down at him. Daniel's legs nearly gave beneath him. The voice hadn't come from his memory. It had been there, spilling from the black hole in the ceiling, raw and trembling. Danny. He hadn't been called that in years, not since his sister's funeral. The eyes above glowed faint in the beam of his rolling flashlight. Wide, wet, human, not the clouded eyes of the dead, but alive, watching him. Who the hell? His voice cracked. He raised his revolver, hand trembling. Show yourself. The attic swallowed the silence, only Storm's growl filling the air. The dog stood rigid, his tail stiff, teeth bared toward the ceiling. Something shifted up there, weight crawling backward, away from the gap. The plaster crumbled, flakes falling like dry snow onto Daniel's shirt. He gritted his teeth, lifted the ladder fully, and climbed. Storm barked, frantic, pacing circles below, but obeying the command to stay. His claws scratched against the linoleum as if begging to follow. Daniel's boots creaked on the boards above. His flashlight beam wavered over broken trunks, shredded insulation, and a scatter of old toys his father never threw out. A rusted tricycle, a headless doll. The smell hit harder up here. Sweet rot mixed with something chemical, something sharp that stung the nose. He turned the beam and froze. In the far corner, crouched low, was a girl. Couldn't be more than 17. Her hair hung in matted strands, her skin caked with filth and blood. Her knees were pulled to her chest, and in her hand, clutched like a talisman, was a photograph. Daniel's breath left him. The photo was warped with damp, but the faces were clear enough. His own, 20 years younger. His mother, his sister, Beth. The girl hissed when the light touched her, shielding her eyes. "Put it down," Daniel ordered, voice sharp. His revolver tracked her trembling form. "Put it down and come out slow." She didn't move, just rocked, whispering something under her breath. The words came jagged, but Daniel caught them. She said you'd come back. She said you'd remember. Every hair on his body rose. Who said? The girl's eyes, wild and glassy, flicked toward the shadows in the far wall. And then Daniel saw the outline. A hole. A space dug into the insulation, boarded just enough to look like a wall from outside. Something had lived there. Blankets, jars of water, half-eaten cans. And bones. Small bones scattered like dice across the dark. His mouth dried. His chest caved with an old, buried ache. "Beth!" His voice was a whisper now. Ridiculous, impossible. His sister was long dead. Drowned in the river at 12. At least, that's what they had told him. What the whole town believed. The girl rocked harder, clutching the photograph. She said you'd be angry. Said you never wanted to know. Daniel took one step closer. The board screamed under his boot. That was when the girl snapped. With a shriek, she lunged for a box in the shadows. Her hand closed around something metal, long and jagged, an old roofing nail bound to a stick, a makeshift weapon. Daniel raised his revolver. "Drop it." She didn't. She came at him, wild and desperate. He had less than a second. He fired. The blast shattered the attic silence. Wood splinters burst from the rafters as the shot went wide, deafening in the cramped space. Storm erupted in furious barking below. The girl's weapon slashed across Daniel's forearm. Pain lit his nerves like fire, the cut shallow but bloody. He roared, shoving her back against the boards. She fell hard, gasping, the photograph fluttering from her grip. Daniel's light caught it as it landed by his boot. This time, he saw it clearer. It wasn't just his family. In the corner of the picture, faint and almost hidden, stood another man, Sheriff Alan Crowder, Daniel's old mentor, his father's closest friend, the man who had investigated Beth's drowning, the man who'd told him to let it go. The girl whimpered, clutching her side where she'd landed on the boards. Daniel staggered back, while climbing his throat. His revolver shook in his grip. "What the hell is this?" His voice cracked, rage and fear colliding. "Where did you get that photo?" The girl's eyes locked on his, filled with a grief so deep it looked older than her face. She kept them, all of them. She said he lied to you. She said he buried the truth right here, under your feet. Daniel glanced toward the hole in the wall, toward the bones. His stomach turned. "No," he muttered, more to himself than her. "Beth!" She drowned. She drowned. The girl's laugh was broken glass. "Ask him. Ask your sheriff. Ask what really happened to your sister." The attic felt smaller by the second, suffocating with dust and old lies. Daniel lowered the gun, sweat dripping into his eyes. He wanted to run, wanted to drag Storm out the door, drive until the field were gone, until the house was nothing but a smear in the rear view. But the girl's words sank deep, gnawing at the old scars. "Ask him. Ask Crowder." Daniel's bloodied arm throbbed. His revolver weighed heavy in his hand. And somewhere in the dark between the walls, something creaked, another presence shifting unseen. Storm's barking cut off, replaced by a single guttural snarl. Daniel turned toward the attic opening. The ladder was empty, the kitchen below silent. Storm was gone. Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears. Storm. No answer. No claws on the linoleum. No bark. No breath. Just silence below the ladder. He dropped to his knees, peering into the kitchen. The overturned lamp left the room in shadow, light swaying from the broken ceiling. His revolver trembled in his hand. Storm. The only sound was the creak of a floorboard somewhere deeper in the house. The girl in the attic gave a dry laugh, more cough than joy. He'll take him, just like he took her, just like he takes all of them. Daniel's chest constricted. Who? Her face was gray in the flashlight beam, lips split with blood, eyes gone hollow. You already know. Daniel descended, boots thudding on the kitchen floor. His body screamed with unease, instincts tugging him in two directions. Search for Storm or get the hell out. But the blood, the bones, the photograph. He couldn't leave it. Not anymore. He moved cautiously, revolver ready, toward the living room. The furniture loomed like forgotten giants in the dark. The curtains hung heavy, rotten with mildew. Every corner seemed to breathe. Then he heard it, low, muffled, behind the old oak door beneath the staircase. Storm's bark. Strained. Gagged, almost. Daniel's heart crashed against his ribs. He yanked the door open. The cellar steps gaped into black. A draft rolled up, cold and damp, carrying the smell of earth and copper. Storm. The bark came again, faint, desperate. Daniel charged down the stairs, light bouncing across stone walls. Storm was there, tethered by a rope around his neck. Straining against it, eyes blazing when Daniel appeared. Relief flooded the dog's body. He yanked so hard the rope cut into his fur. Daniel rushed forward, slashing the rope with his pocket knife. Storm pressed against him, trembling, licking the blood on his sleeve as if to steady him. "It's okay, boy. I got you." But it wasn't okay. Not even close. The cellar stretched further than Daniel remembered. As a boy, he had hated this place. The way his father had warned him never to play near it, never to go digging in the far walls. Tonight, the space seemed endless. And in the middle of the dirt floor was something new. A trapdoor. The wood was fresh, not warped with age like the rest of the house. Iron bolts sealed it, scratched by claws and fingernails. Storm growled deep in his chest, fur bristling. Daniel's throat tightened. He approached the hatch, knelt, ran his palm across the smooth timber. Someone had been opening this. Recently, he pulled at the bolts. They gave way with sickening ease. When he heaved the hatch open, the smell nearly knocked him flat. Rot, old blood, something worse. The beam of his flashlight pierced the hole and froze on faces. Not alive, not whole. Children, 5, maybe 6 small bodies, curled in unnatural piles, flesh mummified by time. Each one clutched something, ribbons, broken toys, bits of clothing. Daniel gagged so hard he nearly dropped the light. His chest heaved, but no air came. Storm whined, backing away, tail tucked between his legs. And then the voice came from behind. "Should have stayed out, Danny." Daniel spun. Sheriff Alan Crowder stood at the base of the cellar stairs. Older now, thicker in the waist, but the same steel eyes Daniel had trusted his entire life. His revolver gleamed in his hand. Storm growled low, stepping between them. Daniel's mouth was sand. You told me she drowned. Crowder's face was stone. Because that's what you needed to hear. The words sliced deeper than the revolver ever could. Daniel shook his head while burning his throat. Beth, she didn't drown. Crowder's silence was an answer all its own. Daniel's knees buckled. He gripped the wall, vision swimming. You son of a bitch. Crowder's lip twitched. Almost pity, almost contempt. You think the world's clean, boy? You think this town don't feed on its own? Your daddy knew. He knew the price. The words were knives, each one twisting. Storm barked, snapping the moment. Crowder lifted his revolver. Step aside, Danny. Daniel raised his own gun. 2 hands now, though his arms shook violently. You'll have to shoot me. Crowder smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. I already did. 20 years ago. The room spun with the weight of betrayal. Daniel's trigger finger trembled. Storm lunged first. The shepherd hurled himself at Crowder with a force born of fury. The revolver fired, once, twice, the cellar echoing like thunder. Storm yelped, but his jaws clamped onto Crowder's arm, dragging him down. Daniel fired. His shot tore through the sheriff's chest. Crowder stumbled, gun clattering across the dirt, his eyes wide with shock. Beth, he rasped, blood bubbling at his lips. Then he crumpled. Storm released him, staggering back, his side bleeding from a grazing shot. He whimpered, pressing against Daniel's leg. Daniel dropped the revolver, collapsed beside his dog, clutching him. Tears carved hot paths down his face. It's over, boy, he whispered, though he knew it wasn't. Not really. The night bled into dawn. By the time backup arrived, the girl had vanished from the attic, vanished as though she had never been there. But the bodies remained. The hatch. The truth buried beneath his childhood home. Daniel sat on the porch steps as the sun rose, Storm's head heavy in his lap. His arm throbbed with pain, his heart heavier still. Deputies moved like ghosts around the property, whispering about what they'd seen, what they couldn't unsee. He stared across the fields, dew glistening like tears. He thought of Beth, her laugh, her stubbornness, her hand tugging as into summer rivers. She hadn't drowned. She hadn't been lost a chance. She had been taken, and he hadn't been there to stop it. Storm whined, lifting his head to lick the salt from Daniel's cheek. Daniel managed a broken smile. We're still here, he murmured. We're still fighting. The house loomed behind him, hollow by secrets. The land would never feel like home again. But as the morning light spread over the fields, Daniel whispered his sister's name into the quiet. It hung in the air, soft, trembling, and finally, free.